I want to talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce getting married. Okay,
Let's do
but
it.
really, I want to talk about it more from like the brand side of things and like what I kind of saw as the positive and negatives of how brands tried to participate and who came out on top, who came out
Um,
not looking so good.
Imagine having your wedding be a brand moment that
I
people are
know. And
trying
that,
to glom onto. Oh my god.
yeah. I mean, but that's her life now, right?
Mhm.
It was to be expected. I mean, NBC News called it the American Royal Wedding, which is super cringe. There was a guest list of under 1,000 people, movie stars, models, artists of all kinds were there.
Practically
Um,
a destination micro wedding at
I know.
Madison Square Garden.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, one of those things was that, it was at Madison Square Garden and then it flashed those purple just and T married, which I thought was kind of cringe because it did kind of remind me of AT&T. And
Right?
AT&T kind of acknowledged that by, posting about it. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce didn't have a wedding. They executed a brand activation with a ceremony attached. And that's kind of what happened. I feel like we've been getting all these like small snippets of people who have attended and the brands that like were there or that were used. So the Knot put a branded moving truck outside of MSG, which to me felt, it was a perfect fit, right? It's the business alignment is there. You're not really forcing it. But then you had American Eagle Outfitters, whose stock had jumped because of the Kelsey collab, make an announcement like, and we're waiting for that trigger. But then you had a bunch of brands that basically launched AI generated brand memes reacting to it. The New York Times ran a piece calling them all out. And I think it was both like, okay, you're trying to glom on to this event, but then also you're using AI generated content, which means that you don't really care about it enough to create a actual, content piece around it. And I think that's where it's like, w- obviously we have all these moments of, monoculture. We're talking about that, right? With like FIFA, the World Cup, where like brands are jumping in and it seems like they're genuinely want to be a part of it, right? We kind of knew what the date was going to be. So it's like you could have prepared something in advance, but instead it seemed like everybody was just jumping on to like come out with something instead of putting actual thought behind it. And I think like a big thing that I kind of want to talk about is like as a brand, when you are trying to piggyback on things, I would like brands to think about these things a little bit more than just creating, a half-assed, brand post about it. And it's funny because we've seen previously that for her engagement and for her albums, how brands have reacted to that. And they've done a much better job doing that than they have for the wedding. So, in terms of, what brands do to participate in like, monoculture events, would love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, she and this relationship are a brand as
You're
far
right.
as culture goes. It makes perfect sense to kind of create a moment where brands can jump in and engage. But like you said, I think it makes way more sense to have planned for something. It's not like we didn't know this was coming. We've been
Right.
talking about this for a long time.
I mean, they've been
So
engaged for like 2 years now, I think.
right. I mean, it seems like brands put more thought into annual events like the Super Bowl
Mhm.
than they did into this, especially if they're generating like crappy AI memes.
Mhm, right.
And why
Yeah,
did we all do that?
I know, I know.
Mhm.
I think another thing too, which has been an interesting thing, I think from a PR standpoint, is this whole idea of like the tackiness or like all the drama of like who she invited, who she didn't invite, very prominently being like the whole Blake Lively relationship. Maybe brands felt a bit of hesitation because of all like, the negative, drama around the wedding narrative, right? The fact that, there is a lot of people talking about how tacky it is based on, the type of stuff that was happening at the wedding itself, like the buffet line and like the flowers that were caught by like, the friend. I saw today that there was like a raffle for like a Chanel bag. For me as like a brand that like if I want to be known as like luxury and care about craft and like, how things are made, I don't know that I would want to necessarily be involved with, you know, tackiness, being, mentioned along the same lines with my name. Um, I will say that the one brand that I did see that, and it isn't even that like they are putting themselves out there as like we were, we participated, is Christian Dior, because like that's who designed both the outfits for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. But I actually think that them not announcing it is working better for them than for them to like announce it. And it's very funny because we also recently had the wedding of Dua Lipa, who was pretty open about like, having photos come out in Vogue, having photos of like her dress, not just photos, but like there was like videos showing what her wedding dress looked like. And it was like behind the scenes kind of look. So it allowed the brand itself to come out and like say, like, yes, we designed her dress and this is what it looks like. And, it was a very like
Oh,
well
yeah.
produced video. And we haven't seen that from Christian Dior yet. And I'm wondering if that is going to come out
Mhm.
or not, because it's like you are being associated with them.
Mhm.
You think you would want to get, something out of it.
And that's also one that it doesn't feel tacky.
Right.
It doesn't it fits the brand, it's relevant to the audience, it makes sense for them to show up in that way, and they actually have something to say, whereas a lot of these AI generated memes and whatnot just didn't have anything to say, so they went with the lowest common denominator. Like, it makes perfect sense for, like, Sephora and things like that to jump in. It makes sense for Dior to jump in, but, there were plenty that had basically no business being there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's also part of this other topic where it's like there's two fandoms kind of coming together. It's like Taylor Swift and her fandom, and then you have Travis Kelce and like football.
Mhm.
So it's like brands are kind of caught between, do we focus on just one or do we focus on them together? And I think the fact that they're kind of trying to focus on them together makes it so you're not really focusing on either one, right? Or it's like
Mhm.
it's much easier to, create content for a Swiftie knowing that like, they're going to appreciate it than like, trying to have both of them, come together as like one. And I think that's where it's like brands, going forward, have to think about if you do want to participate in the whole like Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift spectacle and brand, are you going to do it as like one whole thing or just as that have been as like the separate, entities? I think that's something that brands need to decide, you know, um, in order to like, know who you're targeting and speak to that audience directly.
I mean, it certainly makes more sense for the Swiftie base to be following a wedding narrative, but, you know, there's room for both.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then yeah, I think the other thing too is it's one of the few moments that it seemed that Taylor Swift as like a brand didn't really figure out how she wanted it to come out. I admire her as like a marketing and like business person, like how she has managed to like,
Oh, sure.
take her brand and like who she is and all that, create community around it, really be close to like her fans who like adore her and will follow her anywhere. I saw this the TBPN boys were talking about this as like she's a master in like creating windows around her experiences, right? So she has like the
Yeah.
very big, more expensive eras concert. She'll do the documentary and have that be come out in like theaters. So you have to pay to go to like the theater to watch it, and then eventually it'll trickle down to the streaming platforms that most people already have. So this idea, it's like knowing the right time and the right product to put in front of your fans. She kind of gets digs for it here and there for like doing multiple album covers and stuff. So it is interesting to kind of have her push the boundaries of how she's selling herself as a business.
Yeah.
And this felt like it it wasn't fully as controlled as she would have liked it to be.
I agree, and I understand why that would be difficult too. If you're, I mean, her if her brand is telling heartfelt stories about romance and relationships through her music, then creating a brand feeding frenzy out of your wedding is
Mhm.
a tough balance to strike, right? And she's not going to be able to keep that kind of activity away from the wedding unless she makes it absolutely invisible to the public.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that was like one of the things, right? Was like you could go Zendaya and Tom Holland route of it being completely hidden away from everybody, and then you just kind of announce, "Yeah, we're married," like, as you're doing, like,
Right.
movie premieres, or go, like, the Dua Lipa round where it's like, you know where it is, people can get photos and can get some access, and she kind of went for something in between, and it didn't really work one way or the other. I think that's kind of where, as, like, a brand her brand to, like, think about, is this the way that she wanted her wedding to come out or to, like, be talked about?
Absolutely.
Okay, so a couple lessons for me. Speed is not enough. Creating AI generated content in order to participate in a moment of monoculture ends up being far more embarrassing and tacky than if you had
Mhm.
planned this in advance. A lot of these things, like, we have enough knowledge to kind of create something around. So if you know that you want to participate in this at some point, then it's like thinking about it. Before it actually happens, is a smart thing to do. I think about it as in, like, the way that in journalism we have obituaries already written up for people that we know are aging or are getting close, so that they kind of have it ready to go, as opposed to trying to write an obituary at the last minute once the person has already passed, right? And these are things that, like, we know are happening, and much like you said, right? It's like we know the Super Bowl is coming. We know that the Olympics are coming. We know that, the World Cup is coming.
Mhm.
These are things that we could plan in advance. And we had heard, rumblings that the wedding was going to be on July 3rd. We might not have thought it was actually real, but it was still, like, enough time to kind of create an idea or create a piece of content if that was what you thought your brand wanted to participate in. Another lesson is to fandom problem, or the fact that, if you're going to go after or try to go after both of the audiences that don't really have much overlap, you're really catering to neither audience, because then neither audience kind of feels as if you're talking to them in a way that they'll find relatable or appealing. Um,
Mhm.
and
The most
then,
successful ones were absolutely pertinent to wedding brands, right?
right.
Mhm.
Right, 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 and it's funny because it's like, if you remember for, like, her engagement, a lot of brands just all they did was, like, share a picture of her and, like, a congratulations, right? And that
Yeah.
was enough, and I feel for
Mhm.
this one, they either wanted to do too much or not enough, and they
Mhm.
ended up kind of being, like, in the middle of neither. And then, specifically here, being able to jump in on an audience that is to be truly gonna be engaged, like the Swifties, would have been better than trying to, go after both of them.
I would say this is just another classic example of, showing up with credibility.
Mhm,
The Knot did a great job, to your point, on this. They absolutely have every right to be there. Any makeup brands, beauty brands, that makes sense. AT&T, to your point, they
mhm,
leaned into the moment in the right way. Everybody else maybe should have just kept it simple.
mhm. Totally agree.